past week, we watched in this country as this big, beautiful bill is now signed into law, and it will have ugly and unjust consequences. It is lethal legislation. It is a bill that kills. And watch this. This bill that kills, the Republicans are so dirty and slick that they made sure that it will not go into effect until after the midterm elections. And so people are going to get caught up in what tax returns they get and somehow conclude that this was a beautiful bill, but the ugly consequences are soon to come. And y'all, when they passed it, here's what messed me up. There were those who had the nerve to get up and read their edited Bible, and they read their edited Bible in order to justify the injustice that they were perpetrating.
If that doesn't leave a bad taste in your mouth, the big, beautiful bill that passed the Senate should. The leaders of this nation, who all claim to be Christian, committed the most un-Christ-like thing since slavery. They have kicked 17 million Americans off health care, and 653,000 of them live in Georgia. They cut $186 billion off of food assistance from families and eliminated free lunch from children. Clutch your pearls, you ain't gonna believe it. Reach for your asthma pump. Everybody's electric bill will be going up by $168 a month. And at the same time, they're giving a $1 trillion tax cut for billionaires. Not to mention, over the last week, they have left 500,000 Haitians unprotected.
You know those people that I talk about all the time, the black triumvirate of the church plant pastors, the black civic organization leaders, the Prince Hall Freemasons, the black Greek letter organizations, the academics, the politicians, the athletes, the entertainers. But the ones that I hone in on the most are the church plants, because the church plants are the ones that influence the people directly the most, because they have a captive audience. People are going into those churches, going into those sanctuaries, going in there to hear from the supposed man of God. And what they are receiving is pulpit propaganda, because they're getting propagandized by these pulpit pimps, these church plants in the pulpit, disguising themselves as ministers of the gospel, but are really hirelings. They don't represent the gospel of Jesus Christ. They don't preach the gospel of Jesus Christ. They preach the gospel of the Democratic Party. They are paid and they are given incentives to further the Democratic message. They are the biggest threat to the flourishing of the black community, because they are there to keep black people in a permanent state of victimhood. They are there to paint the picture that if you don't get on board with the Democratic agenda, you are not black. We will take your black card. They are there to tell you, as black people, you must hate everything that is done that aligns with biblical truth, with biblical values. You must hate everything that aligns with white supremacy. Even if the white supremacists supposedly are doing things that are pleasing in the eyes of God. No, that is wrong, because you are black and we are church plants and we represent the Democratic Party. So you had all these pastors this past Sunday, these church plant pastors, speaking against the big, beautiful bill. Now, regardless of what you may think about the big, beautiful bill, there are some things in there that I don't agree with. Some of the spending, some of the things that were increased as part of this bill. But nevertheless, these church plant pastors all read from the same sheet of music. That's how you know it's spiritual. That's how you know they're being controlled and influenced by the same spirit of the world, the spirit of the God of blackness, because they all sound the same. If you haven't done so already, if you want to incorporate gold or silver or other precious metals into your retirement portfolio, go to thebiblicalconservative.com/gold or click on the link in the description.
And numerous people have been swept away by devastating floods in Central Texas. Among the dead, an 8-year-old and 9-year-old, both campers at a Christian camp. A 27-year-old man died trying to save his family by punching a hole through windows in the trailer where they lived so that they could escape the fast rising waters. In Central Texas now, body bags, people swept 20 miles down river, homes destroyed, dead dreams, and strangled hope. Violent wind ripped Job and Mrs. Job's children away from their loving bosom. Swelling floodwaters snatched away lives in Central Texas. These awful occurrences we call natural disasters. But let me tell you about another disaster, man-made. Conceived and constructed by malevolent, misanthropic, cowardly, and unjust members of our own species. Brought to you by persons elected in this country. A meal plated with the garnish of death, topped with the special sauces of skillful deception, rhetorical mendacity, and policy sleight of hand. The winds killed the 10 children of Job and Mrs. Job. The flood snatched the lives away of precious ones in Central Texas, and this human-caused disaster may end up taking 51,000 lives in this nation, according to the University of Pennsylvania. Americans at the bottom 20% of all earners will see their annual after-tax incomes fall by 2.5%, and the top 20% will see a 2.4% boost. This is human-conceived devastation. $560 in losses for someone who reports little or no income by 2034, and more than $118,000 in gains for someone making over $3 million. Human design devastation. A person making $217,000 or more annually would receive a $12,500 tax cut. Someone making $35,000 or less would see only $150 of savings. Human designed misery. Medicaid. 70 million of us on Medicaid. Dana and I were listening to the radio, and there are people who say around this nation they hate Medicaid, and they ain't even got sense enough to know that they're on it. Because each and every state calls it something different. But these people who want to racialize poverty and say that somebody is taking, they are the very ones who have nothing without Medicaid. Medicaid, the government's health care program for low-income folk, will be cut by $1 trillion. Forcing maybe 17 million people off its roll. This is necropolitics. The politics of death. This is human designed death.
You know, if I sat in that church and heard that man spew that rhetoric, spew that propaganda for 5 minutes, I'm going to have to get up and go. We don't come to church. Now, you can state things that are contrary to the word of God and what a biblical value is. It's important for Christians to be engaged in government, but from a biblical perspective, not from this socialist, Marxist, communist perspective that he's coming from. And see, the problem with these church plants is that people genuinely will listen to what this man has to say because he is their man of God and will not question it. And that's why I say they are there to keep black people in a permanent state of victimhood. This dude had the nerve to conflate what happened in Texas with the devastation of the floods to the big, beautiful bill. But that's what church plants do. He wasn't the only one. Let's turn to a familiar, quote unquote, pastor on this channel, Dr. Freddie Haynes of Friendship West in Dallas, Texas.
I'll make it real plain. In a real sense, my sisters and brothers, it happens, and it happens on repeat. This past week, we watched in this country as this big, beautiful bill is now signed into law, and it will have ugly and unjust consequences. It is lethal legislation. It is a bill that kills. And watch this bill that kills. The Republicans are so dirty and slick that they made sure that it will not go into effect until after the midterm elections. And so people are going to get caught up in what tax returns they get and somehow conclude that this was a beautiful bill, but the ugly consequences are soon to come. And y'all, when they passed it, here's what messed me up. There were those who had the nerve to get up and read their edited Bible, and they read their edited Bible in order to justify the injustice that they were perpetrating. Have you thought about the fact that they have been so determined to kill Obamacare or the Affordable Care Act that as a result of them murdering Medicaid and gutting the Affordable Care Act, by the end of next year, 17 million people will not have access to health care in this country. They are so they are so determined to blame the poor for their impoverished predicament that they are presenting this bill that kills, this lethal legislation, and some 5 million people will no longer have access to SNAP. They are cutting services for veterans while adding to the military budget. Wait, what? I got to go back and grab you, because the veterans who served in the military are losing resources while they are spending more money on weaponry because of militarism and the madness of militarism in this country. And my sisters and brothers, here is what a group of us did, led by activist attorney, the brilliant Angela Rye. She has organized the State of the People movement, where we've been going around the country targeting cities to organize and serve communities that are underserved. And then, my sisters and brothers, this week we had a marathon, watch this, streaming session where we were educating the public about the badness of this bill, the ugly consequences, and the racist ramifications of this bill. And right before I got on, attorney and preacher gets on, and she says, Monique Presley says, we ought to have a time of prayer. I came on and said, black folk have always understood the connection between policy and prayer. Let's have a prayer session for an hour. After all, Jesus said, could you not tarry 1 hour? We prayed at midnight, from midnight to 1 o'clock, believing that God would come through. And then, my sisters and brothers, sadly, sinfully, shamefully, the bill got passed. The bill got passed, and I cannot lie, at that moment I wondered, how is it that wrong and wickedness keep winning? How is it that injustice somehow is on the throne and justice is on the scaffold? It made me upset. It made me wonder with the psalmist, God, I know that you're good, but your goodness doesn't seem to be showing up in dealing with bad people. I think I'll stop right there, because if I'm God, here's what I do. I wipe out all the bad folk. If I'm God, here's what I do. I make sure the bad folk, they get what's coming to them immediately, if not sooner. It seems like God just takes God's time. Y'all can judge me all you want to. I'm just letting you know there are some people on my list that I'd like to say, God, get them right now.
I can't listen to him for much longer. This guy said a whole bunch of words, but said nothing. He said nothing. And that whole soliloquy that he gave, where he was using those phrases, you got to understand something about preachers and speakers. They know how to use a certain tone, how to raise their octave, how to get you emotionally engaged, how to connect with you on an emotional level. And that's what he's doing. He's connect. Did you hear what he said? He said they had a 1 hour prayer session. And I guess they were praying for that bill not to pass. But yet it passed. And he was discouraged because God did not stop the bill. You think God wanted to stop the passage of a bill that allows more children to be alive, especially black children? You think God's going to stop the passage of that? You think God's going to stop the passage of people living under delusion by thinking they are girls when they are boys and harming girls? You think God's going to be pleased with that? You have to understand something. When it comes to righteousness and justice, it's not man's justice. See, this guy is talking about man's justice when he says this was injustice. God's justice is biblical. It's righteous. It's based upon his law, his righteousness, not upon man's idea of equity. Pastor Freddie Haynes. And our last entrant, none other than Dr. Jamal Bryant.
If that doesn't leave a bad taste in your mouth, the big, beautiful bill that passed the Senate should. The leaders of this nation, who all claim to be Christian, committed the most un-Christ-like thing since slavery. They have kicked 17 million Americans off health care, and 653,000 of them live in Georgia. They cut $186 billion off of food assistance from families and eliminated free lunch from children. Clutch your pearls, you ain't gonna believe it. Reach for your asthma pump. Everybody's electric bill will be going up by $168 a month. And at the same time, they're giving a $1 trillion tax cut for billionaires. Not to mention, over the last week, they have left 500,000 Haitians unprotected. A congresswoman in Minnesota was murdered, as was her husband, in their home by somebody who was a professed evangelical Christian Trumpite. And President Trump did not go to the funeral. He went to play golf instead of paying respects. There are in America 800 billionaires. That's it. 800 billionaires who benefit from the big, beautiful bill, where contrarily, there are 340 million who will suffer. What they don't understand, or what you don't understand, is the majority of those on SNAP, the majority of those collecting food stamps are white people. But they hate minorities so much that they will injure themselves just thinking they are punishing us. 435 hospitals will close in rural areas. They cannot even give an estimate of how many people will die in the first 3 years because of the absence of Medicare, Medicaid, and the closing of hospitals. They have opened up in broad daylight alligator Alcatraz that is fit for canines to house immigrants, while white evangelical churches have said nothing about any of it. And if you're anything like me, it should leave a bad taste in your mouth.
And there you have it. A compilation of church plant pastors speaking against the big, beautiful bill. Taking time out of their sermons to not preach the gospel of Jesus Christ, but to preach the gospel of the Democratic Party, to preach the gospel of social justice, to preach the gospel of Marxism. I mean, Jamal Bryant is like he's about to go shoot a rap video with the way he was dressed in church. And the sad part about it is you got people that are sitting in those congregations who are being led astray because they're listening to a hireling. They're listening to a wolf in sheep's clothing. They're listening to a false preacher, a false pastor, a pulpit propagandist. That's who they're listening to. And all that does is make people victims. We're not victims. We are empowered for greatness.